your weekly horoscope with Jerry and Matt.
Good evening, horror fans. Welcome to another edition of the Weekly Horoscope. I'm your host, Jerry, here with my partner, Matt. And Matt, this week we're going to do Franchise Frenzy. We're going to take some of the most iconic and longest-running horror franchises, and we're going to grab an odd entry into those franchises and kind of pick it apart. This is an interesting one. What do you think?
Yeah, I love it. Franchises are fun because they're kind of like the McDonald's of film. You know exactly what you're going to get, and regardless of the quality, you often get guilty pleasures for it. So it's kind of like that cheeseburger wrapped in wax paper that you eat while you're driving. You just don't take it that serious, you know?
Yeah.
And so because of that, franchise movies, they can just have fun with the ridiculousness of the characters, and both of these franchises certainly do that.
As a child of the 80s, both of these are right in my wheelhouse. I was with both franchises from the beginning. I must admit, I did kind of drop out at some point as they went on and on and on.
Yeah, I think most people did.
Yeah. But we're going to start tonight with A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors from 1987, directed by Chuck Russell, who would go on the next year to direct a very underappreciated remake of The Blob.
Mm-hmm.
So you got quality directing here, and we'll get to later on. There's actually a lot of people who went on to become successful stars associated with this movie.
Yeah, and I believe. Oh, I was going to say, I believe Wes Craven wrote the original screenplay for the movie. They had asked him to come back after Nightmare on Elm Street 2 was just not that great. So they said, we need to get him back involved somehow. So,
and that springboards perfectly. I was going to say, in my opinion, this is the second best entry in the entire franchise behind the original.
I agree 100%.
We start with Kristen, who's a young girl who has this imagination and sees this old house in her dreams, and she's building a papier-mâché version of the house. And as she falls asleep, she's transported to the house where kids are outside singing the Freddy song. You know, 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you.
Yeah.
And there's a young girl on a tricycle, and she rides into the house, and she follows her, yelling at her, "Don't go in there, don't go in there." And of course, inside the house, Freddy emerges, and he chases her. She picks up the girl, and she's running, and she runs into a room full of skeletons. And she looks down at the girl in her arms, and she's a skeleton too now.
Yeah.
And at this point, she wakes up, or so she thinks.
And I got it reminded me of from last week when we talked about Hereditary. It reminded me of the house, and I wonder like how much of that was like influenced in Hereditary.
Yeah.
Is that the house is a theme throughout this entire movie,
including the end. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, good point. So she thinks she's awake now. She goes to the bathroom, and as she grabs the faucet to turn it on, the handle turns into fingers and grabs her. And in the mirror, her image turns into Freddy's face, and he slashes at her. And her mom bursts in the bathroom, and it appears she's standing there with cut wrists, and she's been trying to commit suicide.
Yep.
The original script, I was reading, goes far deeper into the suicidal aspect of this.
Yeah.
And they backed off a little bit because it was so dark.
So dark. Yeah. They talk about it a lot, but when they get to the mental institution, a lot of these kids are suicidal, and they say it here and there, but they don't really dive into it much deeper than that. But if you're paying attention, you know, you can see that they're dealing with the psychologist really talks about how like the dreams are byproducts of their guilt and their the emotional scars of their immoral behavior, and they kind of get into it, but then they never deep dive, like you said.
Yeah. Probably for the better. Would have made maybe a less entertaining, maybe a deeper but a less entertaining movie.
Yeah.
So Kristen is sent to the psych hospital where she freaks out because they're going to sedate her. And brand new employee Nancy, who happens to be our heroine, our last girl from the original, shows up as a new employee, and she calms her down. When Nancy goes to get Kristen's things from her house, she sees the papier-mâché house that she built and recognizes that it was her own house that she grew up in that she originally experienced Freddy in. So we find now Kristen is drawing, and all the kids are trying to stay awake. They're trying to do things to occupy themselves. In a tricycle, the same tricycle that the girl was on outside the house, comes rolling in with a cool blood trail on the wheels all the way into the room. And then it kind of starts to melt and melts into the floor. And as the floor opens, a giant Freddy worm comes out of the floor and starts eating her, very Jaws, with Quint sliding down the boat into his mouth.
Just like one chomp at a time up her legs. Yeah. She's just screaming hysterically.
This movie goes out of its way to present Freddy in a lot of different aspects. He's not just Freddy. He's a giant worm. He takes a lot of different shapes in here. It makes it a little more interesting of him controlling the dreams.
I think that's one of my favorite parts, is that he'll blend into the environment, or like whatever their fear is, or whatever their nightmare they're having, and he makes that like part of how he's going to kill them. And he kind of does that for each kill, and like uses their own fears, like that they each have, like the wheelchair and the TV.
Yep. So Kristen, when she's getting attacked, she reaches out to Nancy with her mind and pulls Nancy into her dream. And Nancy's able to stab Freddy and get them both out. So we cut to there's a group of all these kids that are in this home. And you mentioned the psychiatrist talking about their shared delusion and basically refusing to believe that this nightmare situation is anything more than a mental illness. And one of the boys in the group has puppets hanging in his room. And this is another example of Freddy manifesting himself differently. One of the puppets turns into a miniature Freddy Krueger and then grows full size.
Yeah.
He then takes and tears the veins out of the arms and legs of this boy and walks him like a puppet through the hallways of the psych hospital.
Puppeteers him right through, but like then they pan back and they see like other people. Just looks like he's sleepwalking.
Yes.
So so it's like happening in another dimension, but it's happening in his mind, so the pain's real.
He walks him all the way to a top floor with like a belfry and cuts the strings, and down the boy goes.
Yep.
And again, this appears as a suicide. It looks like the boy went up there sleepwalking and fell or jumped.
Yep.
No connection back to the dreams, except the kids know what's going on.
Yeah, so all of the people that are trying to help them, they're just like they think they're all suicidal. Something's going on. They're kind of acting like tyrannical parents, not listening to them, just telling them that it's their fault for this. Having immoral thoughts and the way they're acting. It's suppressed guilt, and it's very tyrannical the way they're treating them. And it's kind of making the kids feel a little even crazier.
Yeah. We cut to now. One of the girls is in the TV room trying to stay awake, and she must lose the battle because on the TV there's the Dick Cavett show is on, an old TV show, and he's interviewing Zsa Zsa Gabor. And I read that these were real cameos. This was filmed just for the movie.
I was going to say, I wondered how they did this because, for 1987, it was actually really well done.
Well, Dick Cavett was in on it, and they didn't believe Zsa Zsa Gabor had any idea what she was signing up for. She just took it and went in. So they say her reaction when Dick Cavett turns into Freddy and starts accosting her is genuine because she had no idea what she was signing up for, which I thought was kind of funny.
They had to have done it on purpose. Like, listen, we can't let her know. Like, we have to. This is the best shot we're going to get if she doesn't know. Yeah.
It was the thing I read kind of painted it as at this point in her career, she just didn't care. Like they wanted her to come on, and Dick Cavett, who signed up to do this, recommended her because he thought her reactions would be great.
I thought
that was kind of funny.
Yeah. That's how you know a movie's coming together well, when everyone gets together and just has these great ideas.
Yeah. So the TV that she's watching turns into Freddy, and this is kind of a cool scene. mechanical, almost cyborg arms burst out of the side, and his head almost melts up to the top. And the TV that she's watching is now, a screen with Freddy Krueger's arms and head sticking out of it. And he grabs her by the head, and he utters the infamous line, "Welcome to prime time, bitch." He smashes her skull through the screen. And I also,
which he ad-libbed that.
Robert Englund ad-libbed that, which she was obsessed with becoming a TV star. She said she was going to go to Hollywood and be on TV. Yep. So it really, in my mind, I'm thinking that line should have been in there in the first place, but we're lucky he was smart enough to add it.
Well, he was smart enough. He read that. He was like, well, this has to be said. Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's perfect. And again, you talk about turning their own dreams and scare fears against them. This is a perfect example of that.
Yep.
At her funeral, there's a sister Mary Helena, and she tells Neil, who's the sympathetic doctor in the care of the kids, that the restless spirit must be laid to rest once and for all for the kids to have peace. You don't really know too much more about it, just a creepy nun-like figure offering this weird insight.
Yeah, you always get the random voodoo magic solution for these kinds of movies.
Sure. And this one's a good one. They go back to group therapy, and Nancy's in the group with Neil, and he tells the kids about Freddy. All they know is they're seeing this image. They're being haunted in their nightmares. They don't know anything about it. Well, she does, and she tells them the whole story. And she tells them that Kristen is the key because she has this ability to pull people into her dreams, and then they can fight together.
Yeah, she's like the nexus. Yeah.
And they realize they all have abilities inside their dreams that they don't have in real life. And this happens to be Kristen's, which can, bring the group in, hence the title, the Dream Warriors.
Mm-hmm.
So Neil hypnotizes them all to go to sleep. And they feel like, they keep pulling this same gag where, okay, they're not sleeping, it didn't work. But then their real world turns and it's not real. We get Joey, who is a mute, doesn't speak, but he's always got eyes for this hot nurse. And she comes in and kind of says, wiggles her finger to come with me. And she seduces him. And while they're kissing, her tongue turns into a large, like slug-like thing and chokes him.
A larger tongue? Yeah.
Yeah. It chokes him and then spits out, and these tongues tie him to the bed. He keeps spitting them out until his hands and feet are bound to the bed.
Yeah.
Floor disappears under him, and he is strapped to this bed, hovering over just a fiery pit reminiscent of hell.
Yeah, it was a cool scene. And I think that was like his weakness because he didn't talk. He wouldn't have said anything. Like he wouldn't have been like, "Hey guys, there's someone in the hallway." Like he just quietly went away and did his own thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that he used that against him.
Well, their dream session is interrupted by Dr. Sims, who's the stern female doctor who doesn't believe any of this hubbub and just thinks they're all, denying their reality.
Yeah, just juvenile delinquents.
With this being interrupted and what happened to Joey's now in a coma, and Neil and Nancy are fired for their dangerous care.
Mm-hmm.
As Neil's leaving with his stuff, he sees Sister Mary Helena in a closed section of the hospital, and he follows her. And this is where I remember seeing this as a teenager, and it seems a little hokey now, but when I saw it as a teenager, I was like, wow. Because Sister tells him of years ago, that section being the most dangerous and madly psychotic, criminally insane were left in that section. And a young girl got trapped in there, and the patients kept her in this section where she was tortured and raped for days on end, finally emerging almost dead and with child. And her name was Amanda Kruger. And then she utters that Freddy is the bastard son of 100 maniacs, which biologically, that's not how that works. He doesn't have 100 fathers. But when I heard that, I'm like, wow, that's so cool.
Yeah. I remember hearing that explained. Yeah.
as an adult, it seems a little hokey, but as a teenager, I was like blown away by that.
Yeah,
That
like
explains
learning
everything.
right, learning the mythos after the third movie and everything. Like that's it. Yeah, it's
So she tells Neil that they have to find Freddy's remains and bury him to finally put him to rest. So Neil and Nancy go to her father, who was the police officer from the first one, and he's the only person who would know where Freddy's remains are because he was involved with the initial killing. And he's not helpful at all. He blows them off. Nancy gets a call that Kristen is being sedated and she needs to leave to go help. And Neil says, "I'll stay and I'll get him to help us."
He sits there and tries to talk to him. Yeah.
So Nancy sneaks back into the hospital, gets the remaining kids together in session, and hypnotizes them again to fall asleep to go help Kristen and Joey. And another cool scene, Kristen's asleep now. She's fully sedated. And in her dream, her mother comes in to wake her up and gets beheaded. And Freddy's carrying around her mother's head while her mother isn't reacting to being beheaded, but is chastising her and telling her, things she has to do.
And he's dressed in like a suit and tie from the date, right?
Yeah. Like she brought somebody home and it happened to be him.
Right. And he was just disguised and he turns and it's Freddy.
Again, they did some cool effects in this, particularly for 1987. There were some unique kills and some unique approaches to the movie.
Very much so. Yeah.
Kristen jumps out the window and ends up in Nancy's old house. So now Freddy starts trying to pick off the kids one by one. They're basically all in this same dream world. Mm-hmm. And he goes to Taryn, and she was a former addict, and in this scene, his bladed fingers turn into syringes, and the scars on her arm open up like puckering mouths.
Yeah, they're puckering.
Yeah, and he sticks his syringes in and ODs her on heroin, which was really clever and really awful.
Yeah, I was just glad it wasn't in the eyes. I was like, just put it in the arms, do something.
Yeah, we had no eyes in this one for you, unfortunately. So Nancy, Kristen, and Kincaid meet up, and they're heading to the boiler room. Meanwhile, Will, who's a kid in a wheelchair, but in his dreams he can walk.
Yep.
Freddy attacks him with basically a killer wheelchair.
And he's a wizard too.
Yeah, he's got wizard powers, but they don't work, and he gets taken out by the killer wheelchair. So now there's only 3 left. It's Nancy, Kristen, and a kid named Kincaid, with Joey still tied to the bed. And in a really cool visual scene, these movies aren't known for their outstanding cinematography or anything like that, but when they start walking to Joey, they go down a spiral staircase that's lit with fire. And it was really well shot. It was kind of a pretty scene.
Yeah, I agree. There was some shots in this movie, cinematography wise, that for 1987, I feel like they did as good as they could for this kind of movie. But like if you redid this movie with a lot of these shots, and you could make it a lot more impactful. But for 87, I think they did a really good job, and probably for the budget too.
Yeah. The budget on this was $4 million.
Yeah,
which brought in over $44 million at the box office. Small numbers in today's world, but anytime you're doing 11 times your investment, you're doing pretty well.
100%. Yeah.
So Freddy tries to drop Joey off the bed into the pit of hell, but Nancy saves him, and then she takes a pole and impales Freddy. But one thing that people may not have realized is as Freddy collects these souls, he's getting stronger. Yeah. So he actually pulls the impalement out and just licks it. Had no effect on him whatsoever. We cut to Neil and Nancy's dad back they're at an old junkyard, and they find the remains. And Freddy realizes this is going on, and he actually leaves the kids for a minute. And all the cars in the junkyard all start, and the lights come on, and a distraction.
Wiper blades are going and everything.
Yeah. And they're going to take the bones, and they're going to put them in hollowed ground. and Freddy possesses the bones, and the bones come to life. And as a skeleton, he starts fighting the two of them.
Yeah.
And he kills Nancy's dad, and he injures Neil, and then takes off back to the kids.
Well, he does something really confusing to me. He throws Neil down and he lands in the grave.
Yes.
And then he picks up the shovel and puts 4 things of dirt on him and then leaves. I'm like,
yeah,
well,
that
what
should
did
do
that do?
Yeah,
I was
exactly.
like, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if he was torn because he had 2 things going on at once.
He had to hurry up
to the
yeah,
kids,
I don't
but
know. He's like, oh, he's got some dirt in his mouth. That might help.
yeah, he is not going to get that clean anytime soon. So he goes back to the kids, and now he is clearly in control. He's pulling everybody into mirrors, and they're all getting sucked into these mirrors down this hallway until Joey screams. And you get Joey
who's been silent. Yeah, Joey doesn't talk. So then, yep. Yeah.
Which he discovers is his dream power, and it shatters all the mirrors, and everyone gets out. And they think like, oh, okay, we're safe. The spirit of Nancy's dad appears, and Nancy, even though they're estranged, Nancy hugs him.
Yeah.
And then he quickly is not Nancy's dad. It's Freddy, and he buries his handful of bladed knives into her stomach, cutting her
like
wide.
while they're embracing. He's like, just kidding, and just cuts her.
And she manages to, now when he's turning to fight other people, she takes his hand and impales him with his own blades.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, because those 4 things of dirt didn't really keep him down permanently, Neil had come back too, and he's burying Freddy's remains. So now Freddy's standing there with his blades in his own stomach and his remains getting buried, and he kind of dissolves in orbs of light while he's kind of yelling in agony.
Yeah, yeah. Almost kind of like light hitting a vampire, like the specific spots. It's like burning him up, and like
very
he's like
similar.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the end of Freddy. They managed to work together and got him gone.
Yeah.
So we believe. At Nancy's funeral, Neil sees Sister Mary Helena, and she kind of ducks behind a tall gravestone.
Mm-hmm.
He goes around to talk to her, and she's not there, but he's standing on the grave of Amanda Kruger.
Yeah.
And he realizes that she was the spirit of Amanda Kruger trying to help put Freddy down once and for all.
Yeah, it was just like a spirit guide this whole time.
And that night, the little fake house that Kristen built, everybody's safe, everybody who's left, except the little lights go on inside of it. And you end movie knowing that, maybe Freddy is still out there somewhere.
There's something else still going on. And I like how, it dealt with a lot of, it's a fun slasher movie, but it's cool how they kind of mix in like the anxiety of teenage drama and all of the things, all the kids had things they had to work out specifically that they talked about in the meetings. And then you kind of tie it all to this house. Like this house is like this like emotional prison that they have to conquer, it's kind of a theme throughout the entire movie. It's done really well.
Yeah. I agree. I'm not a huge fan of some of the franchises that bury their product in 10 versions. But I thought this was a perfect example of taking a mythology that you had and kind of building on it, adding a different twist, being creative with some of the things you're doing, and really for a sequel, I thought it was good.
Yeah, I agree. The first one and this one were my 2 favorites, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah,
they tried to do it in 2010. They tried to revamp it in 2010, and it just didn't hit the same. It wasn't as good.
Yeah, I think it was lightning in a bottle, and if they were going to redo it again, I don't think I'd be interested in that. But we mentioned Chuck Russell directed it, and he went on to direct several good features. Patricia Arquette played Kristen. Obviously, she went on to be a famous actress, and as one of the servicemen inside the hospital is Lawrence Fishburne, who is so young he's actually credited as Larry Fishburne. But you could see he knows how to act. Like he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, you go back. It's funny watching him. Like you just knew he had a future. You can watch, but man, this guy was good back then.
Yeah, he was. And there's also a writing credit to a young Frank Darabont, who would go on to make several outstanding
Shawshank,
films.
right?
Shawshank Redemption, The Green Mile, The Mist that we've covered on this show. And he had a screenwriting credit here. So there was some talented people involved with this movie, and they really pushed it to a good direction.
It shows, yeah, for sure. It's fun to go back and see those old movies with so many young people involved, and then you see, oh, this is no kidding, this movie was good. Look at all these people that were involved. Yeah.
The only thing I would say, and I don't know if you agree with me, and it's kind of, I know she's well respected and well revered from her roles in these nightmare movies, but what struck me is Heather Langenkamp as Nancy is not good.
No, it's terrible acting.
She's not good.
It's bad. Like, yeah, it's real. It's, I don't like C movie bad. Like I was just like, ugh.
Very wooden, very fault. Like, particularly when you see there's good actors working around her. I thought most everybody did a really good job.
Felt really organic, and she just felt. I was just like this. I've seen high school plays that were better than this. Like,
I know at horror conventions and everything, she's a big draw, and people love her. Her acting wasn't there for me. Sorry.
Yeah. And the other thing that really is like a pet peeve of mine, and I know it was like a trope thing of the time from the 80s, but Kristen's scream being dialed to 11, the way they have it pre-recorded, and then they just insert it. Because sometimes I watch with my headphones, and I'm like, geez, like it's just like an uncanny, unhuman scream, just like all the way to like 11. And they just, and you can tell it's not her doing it when she's doing it. You can tell they pre-recorded it. See my info. But yeah, they dialed it up way too much. Yeah. That was my only thing.
Yeah, you can always tell where those are recorded afterwards, and they're just not natural.
Yeah.
All right, our second film in this topic is Jason X from 2001, directed by Jim Isaac. And I'll say for a series that went on as long and has many movies and is so iconic in the horror world. You know, everyone knows the Jason mask. Everyone knows the Friday the 13th theme music. This series is not filled with a lot of great movies.
It's not. I think there's just a couple.
My personal favorite is 4.
Yep.
A Final Chapter. It was really well done. It had a story. Tommy Jarvis, played by Corey Feldman, was interesting. The kid doing special effects makeup. And Tom Savini did the kills.
Yeah.
To me, that is the best in the series.
I liked 1, 4. I liked 6 when Jason lives. I liked Freddy vs. Jason. There's some ones that it's a campy to me. Like, I watch them for what they are. Going back to what I said, it's McDonald's. You know.
Yeah. 6 is where Jason first becomes a reanimated, unkillable, almost zombie-like creature, which is very relevant to this story.
Yeah, and Jason Goes to Hell's another. I mean, there's some good ones, but I know they're campy. I know they're ridiculous. You know, like, I just accept it for what it is. Like, I don't.
Yeah.
This one particular, I will say, it's very Saturday morning Sci-Fi Channel production.
Yes, agree.
With the spaceship, and it just feels like a sci-fi movie from the 90s.
That's a perfect analogy, because that's exactly. And the funny thing about this, I'll touch on this in a minute here, but so we start with Jason is being held by the government at the Crystal Lake Research Facility, where a scientist named Rowan plans on freezing him in cryogenic stasis. But a Dr. Wimmer and some soldiers show up, and they decided they were going to study him instead. They don't want to do this to him because he reanimates. He can't be killed. They basically want to use that for weaponry.
We're shutting your operation down. We're in charge, kind of scene. It's
and of course, whenever you try to pull this kind of thing, Jason gets free. He kills them all except for Rowan. And she leads him into the cryostasis chamber, tricks him, pushes him in, and hits the button to freeze him. But he manages to stab his machete through the door.
Yes, through the 3-inch aluminum core or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yes, impaling Rowan, and then leaking the freezing material out into this room as well.
Which
So they end
causes
up
it to
both
lock
frozen.
down. Yeah, so it causes the room to lock down, and she's stuck in there, and she's going to get frozen too.
So they're both froze. The interesting thing about this to me was the Dr. Wimmer who showed up is none other than David Cronenberg, classic film director of
Yeah.
deeply thoughtful psychological body horror,
Mhm.
and he's in this movie.
Yeah.
I
Yeah. You're right. Right. Yeah. But he's
I
also
couldn't.
done some acting. He's done a lot of acting too, right?
He's done a little bit of acting, but I was
Yeah.
shocked to see him here. And I figured out. I read why it was. Jim Isaac used to be the director, was his special effects supervisor on a lot of his films, and he asked David if he could use the same special effects team for this movie, basically Cronenberg's team. And Cronenberg said, yes, as long as you got a spot for me in the movie.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Why not?
And
Get to be in a Jason movie, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Even though it's a brief part, they said as soon as he came in, he started rewriting his dialogue and started tweaking the script and trying to take out some things that didn't make a lot of sense, which, I guess wouldn't surprise you.
Well, that's cool. But he's got all that experience. You let someone like that run. Just run. Do what you're going to do. Do your thing.
Yeah. So we jump forward 455 years later, and a group of student explorers discover the two frozen bodies, and they bring them back to their spaceship. And, I think of a spaceship, I think of trained professionals, and this ship is full of horny and annoying teenagers, just being stupid nonstop.
But that's what makes it a Jason movie, right? Like they kept it like the pitch meeting for this movie was like, all right, hear me out. We've got Jason Voorhees in the future in space, and the executives were like, say no more, just do it.
Jim Isaac said that this is the only thing new you can do with Jason is something like this. So I give him credit for that.
Yeah, it's a Jason movie to its core, but it's in space and it's in the future. Like
they have all this advanced technology. Rowan was stabbed right before she was frozen, and in a kind of a funny scene when they release Jason, he falls out of the cryostasis chamber, but he's got his machete in his hand, and as he falls, he chops off a guy's arm.
Yeah,
even frozen, Jason is
even frozen.
Deadly.
He gets a kill, or gets an arm chopped.
Yeah. But they have technology that the arm is quickly reattached. They patch up Rowan,
patch him right away.
They say, Jason is gone. There's nothing there. He can't be saved. He's long dead. And the teacher is apparently in debt, and finds out a collector would be interested in Jason's corpse. So he wants to preserve it. Of course, everybody makes these terrible decisions.
Right.
So they're disassembling Jason in the morgue, and as he's starting to thaw, he sits up. And in what I think is actually the best death in the movie,
yeah, it is. Yeah.
There's a female doctor working on his autopsy, basically, and he sticks her head into liquid nitrogen, where they show her face instantly, and her whole head just freezes into a block of ice. He pulls it out and smashes her head on the counter.
Turns into a slushy,
into bits. That was pretty cool, and I'm like,
I liked it. Yeah,
we got some maybe got some unique kills at least to enjoy.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. Yeah,
I unfortunately I think that was the best one.
That's the best one. There's another good one, and then the rest of them are kind of standard.
So Rowan tells them that you got to get rid of Jason. He's going to kill everybody on the ship, and they go back to the medical room and find out he's gone. So they send their military crew after him, and the leader's Brodsky, and Jason just picks them off one by one. And here's where I thought we'd get some, we had a couple decent kills, but they were kind of standard, pretty boring.
Yeah.
And he stabs the leader, Brodsky, who is an actor I've seen in a few other things. He's very physically imposing. He's perfect for a military role. He had a prominent role in the Spartacus series that was on Stars.
Mm-hmm.
He's a good actor. So the ship is preparing to dock at a space station, and Jason breaks into breaks into where the pilots fly.
Right.
I'll have to edit this part,
cabin.
I guess.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because it's typically
Cockpit.
a cockpit. Yeah, but I think you can call it a cabin. But that's funny because in most of the movies, he's breaking into a cabin in the woods or something. So.
Yeah. He kills the pilot, so now nobody's
Yeah.
flying the spaceship. And as they're going to dock to this space station with nobody flying, they actually just smash through it and blow up the whole space station. So Jason's killing hundreds of people, even in space.
Yeah. That's what he
The
does.
students and the teacher and Rowan are locked in a room for safety, but Jason breaks through the glass where he finds his original machete, and he switches the knife he had taken back to his standard machete.
Yeah.
The students are going to run to a shuttle. That's how they're going to get out of there. But one of them gets in there, panics, locks the others out, and then tries to leave without unhooking the fuel lines, blowing up the shuttle.
Yeah.
People making bad decisions in movies like this.
Yeah, when they're supposed to be like highly trained, astronauts or fleet members of a space station.
Yeah,
they're just panicking like horny 19-year-olds at a camp.
Yeah, that's what struck me. You're thinking these people must really know what you're doing, and as soon as you get on ship, you're like, these are idiots.
Yeah,
for the most part.
At one point, they're doing like they're looking at some data and stuff, and like two of them are just making out.
Yeah. One of them has a thing for a female android that he spends a lot of time with. And he smartly takes the android and upgrades her, downloads new information so she's better able to fight Jason. And she shows up with a big gun and some karate moves and kicks Jason's ass. And in fact, she blows off one of his arms, one of his legs, and then splatters most of his head. And you're like, oh my God, how's he coming back from that?
Yeah.
But of course, when he collapses, he falls onto one of those medical stations.
Right.
And the
and
regeneration.
No one bothers to go. Yeah. No one bothers to clean up the mess of the body or make sure everything's okay. They're like, all right, he's down. Let's go party. Let's get out of here.
The regeneration machine starts automatically repairing him. That's what it does.
Yeah. Right.
And it sends a message. There's not enough biological material here to work with, so the program defaults to using synthetic materials. So now this was kind of the dual reason for Jason X. It was the 10th film in the series, but Jason X is basically this upgraded armor-plated cyborg version of Jason.
Yeah, if he wasn't a threat already.
Yeah, even his hockey mask is now a metal cyborg-like mask. So again,
it's like an exoskeleton that he has. Yeah.
Credit for trying something new.
Yep.
So the kids and Rowan and the injured Brodsky decide they got to blow the connector hatch from part of the ship that's damaged and stay in the part that's not damaged. And there's a ship coming to rescue them. Jason shows up now and easily beats the cyborg because he's now upgraded as well. And he punches her and her head flies off. So, but she's a cyborg, so she's still okay because they're carrying around her.
She's fine. Yeah, she'll be okay.
Which, to me, the worst part of the movie was now he punches a hole in the outer hull, right? And wind starts whipping through, and people are blown up. There's no wind in space.
It wouldn't happen like that. But that was a trope for a long time.
False.
So. Yeah.
It was like they were they were up in an airplane. No.
Every airplane, yeah. That's not how it works in space at all. Yeah.
One girl even gets pulled.
But they're like in like a wind tunnel, like I'm holding on, and there's like stuff blowing around.
I'm like, no, that's not how that would work. One girl even gets sucked through a grate, and she's strained like she went through a meat grinder. Like that, no. And again, it's hard to debate realistic parts of a movie like this, but stuff like that just throws me out of, if I was immersed in the story, I'm now out.
Yeah.
The survivors end up getting to the outer door that connects to the rescue ship, but it won't open, and Jason is coming. They create a sim world to distract him, and it's very similar to Crystal Lake. There's a lake and a camp, and there's two girls, and they're undressing, of course. And,
Yeah.
you know, so Jason goes to kills these co-eds and they distract him for a minute, but he realizes they're not real and he just walks out of the sim. Brodsky manages to get the gate open. He goes outside
Well, he
the
gets
ship.
them. He kills them in the sleeping bag, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's beating the sleeping
Yeah.
bags against the.
He takes
against
one
the
sleeping,
tree,
one
tree.
of them in a sleeping bag, and they cut to him just beating the other person with one of the other sleeping bags with someone's in, and then finally throws it against a tree.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is, I think,
crazy.
is a throwback to one of the original ones. Like, I think it was one of the first 2 Jason movies where he killed someone that was in a sleeping bag.
Yeah, against the tree. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. So Rowan and one student finally make it into the rescue ship. The guy who made the cyborg, because he still has her head, and Brodsky had gone outside. He's in an EVA suit, and he blocks Jason from getting in. So as the ship finally takes off, the vessel they were on blows up, and Jason is hurtling straight towards the windshield of the rescue ship. He's about to hit. Brodsky flies by, grabs him, and together they launch towards Earth 2. This whole thing was an exploration because Earth had become unlivable. They're now all on Earth 2. That looks exactly like Earth.
Right. Yeah. They don't explain where they are, what galaxy they're in. They just said we have Earth 2 now.
It's just Earth 2. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Brodsky and Jason, both bodies burn up on entry into the atmosphere of Earth 2. And we cut to a pair of teenagers sitting at a quiet lake, very much like Crystal Lake.
Yep.
And they see what they think is a falling star. And we see Jason's new cyborg mask charred and sinking to the bottom of the lake. Very reminiscent of the original where Jason's body was at the bottom of the lake.
Yeah.
But and that's
Full
the end of the
circle.
movie.
Yeah.
My favorite part of the movie was that they did not leave like a door open for the sequel. They kind of wrapped it all up.
They were like, we're just going to leave it there. Yeah.
Yeah. Now people can create ways to do all that, but it kind of wrapped up. This was what you would expect from the 10th entry into a franchise. It was pretty cheesy. There was some humor in it. I did laugh a couple times. Some of the one-liners that the kids were saying
me too. Yeah.
were kind of funny.
Or when he's getting stabbed, he's like, it's going to take more than a rib poke to kill me. And then he gets stabbed. He's like, that'll do it.
Right. Yeah. There were some good one-liners, but all in all, it was a pretty cheesy entry. And I guess when you get to the 10th entry, there's not a lot of originality left.
Yeah, I think that's what, like I said, I think they're just full send with a crazy idea, and they're just having fun with it.
I do give them credit for trying something new. I do give them credit for at least trying to stand out from all the other Jason movies. But in the end, it was pretty ridiculous. But I had a few good laughs out of it, a few good kills.
It's a fun, silly movie. Yeah,
I had never seen it before, so
I had neither.
Can check it off the list now. So excellent. So go ahead.
No, I was gonna say movies like that, they serve their purpose. It's fun to sit back on a Saturday or Sunday and just watch those movies.
Yeah, it was not a financial success and really became it was the end of Jason, except for the Freddy versus Jason that was actually in production before this movie, but had delays and
there was a lot of issues with it, right?
Yeah, right.
I remember hearing about it for years. And I went to the theater and saw Freddy vs. Jason. I was a teenager. Yeah.
I've actually never seen it, so
could
have threw this one in here.
We'll have to revisit that because it's been 20 years since that came out.
All right, so these are some crazy movies. Some parts good, some parts bad, but our topic was franchise frenzy, and I think we hit them.
I agree, and overall, it's just fun. They're just fun movies.
Absolutely, absolutely. So that is our show for this week. We thank you and appreciate you always listening. I'm Jerry. That's Matt. This is the Weekly Horoscope, and we will see you next week.
All right. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, everyone.
Your Weekly Horoscope with Jerry and Matt.